Okay, hi everybody. This is day 993. 993 days since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And we're getting a lot of news in. We even have some suspects now that we are trying to confirm, and it's a little confusing um, because here we have major reports. Um, so many. I have piles here that absolutely make the case that Richard's remains, partial remains, have been found. And at this time, we believe that the FBI are hiding the remains of our son from us. From us. Um, why do we say the FBI? Because of all the information that we have gone through. Um, all of the hidden reports, people are starting to believe us. Why? Let's look at the news. Let's look at the news right now. We have a National Guardsman that is being arrested right now, as or right before I came on. I was just watching it in the news, and they make this really good point, and I'll let you watch the video. But the the major point is that this young man, very young, has access. There's probably like about a million people, almost a million people, that have access to highly classified information. The highly classified information is not being respected. That means our country is not respected. That means the future of our country is not respected. There is no discipline. There is no esprit de corps. There is no. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound familiar? There is 44 four-star generals and admirals that are serving foreign and domestic enemies instead of defending our Constitution. Is this sounding familiar? Because we cannot have these kinds of breaches in the intelligence community that we are told have 6 ways to Sunday to get even with us, right? That they have everything. They have the underground media. They have the underground banking system. They have the insider trading. They have the insider to everything, to the land that we stand on. If they want, you know, they have privileges when it comes to being above the law. We see that over and over and over again. They also have the ability to come together and cover up any crime they want to cover up. And now you can say, why can't, oh, I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed when I hear something like that. Well, they have power, but they don't have dominion. The lies are not sustainable. They come to roost. The consequences come to roost. And they operate on this notion, this false notion, that there are no consequences and that the consequences do not come to roost, and that God is not in control, that the stars in their course didn't fight against Sisera. But they do. They do. And there is an energy that is beyond us that we do not understand, that I think is part of who God is in the Holy Spirit, that controls all things and absolutely fights against evil. And that the evil may have power, but they do not have dominion. And you see that the least of us, when I say just an average young volunteer National Guardsman, has access to the intelligence community and can leak the intelligence community. That's exactly, there's been a breach in the intelligence community because the intelligence community, um, you know, lives on this false premise that they have 6 ways to Sunday to get even with anyone that wants to hold them accountable for the crimes that they commit, and that they feel like they are above the law. And so here we have a Dogberry, in Shakespeare's, I think it was As You Like It. There's a character, uh, my daughters will correct me, but there's a character named Dogberry, and Dogberry is kind of like um, just a little bit clownish, and people think that he doesn't have a very high IQ, and yet he is the one that gets to the bottom of all things, uh, to the case where those that are privileged, that have been given everything, trillion dollar budgets, billion billion-dollar budgets, billion trillions. People don't even know what those are anymore. Otherwise, they would be not too happy with what we have. Just go on Google Earth and look at our roads, look at our infrastructure. For our trillions of dollars in debt, we should be driving in the air in flying cars on top of silver streets, or with landing strips, right? I mean, we should have everything, everything. And if you've been to, around the world, I've been to South Korea, and South Korea in the last 20-25 years has just grown incredibly, and they have a much better infrastructure. Um, and why? Why have we not built up our infrastructure? With trillions of dollars in debt, we should have it all, but we have nothing for our trillions of dollars in debt except for lies, unsustainable lies, and crimes, absolute criminal syndicates, and criminal syndicates that fight for the land. The land. It's always the land and the resources. The land has the resources. And they want the real estate. They want the real estate, y'all. They want the good real estate. And so that gives them a lot of power when you have good real estate. And I think that President Trump was trying to teach us that. Now, I'm not, um, I'm a big fan of Ron Paul. And Ron Paul, and let me see if I put it up there, because he did some amazing things yesterday that I wanted to talk about. Oh, please. Yes, I found him. Yay. Um, because I voted for him twice. And I, matter of fact, in my room, I should get it out and put on my button. I have a Ron Paul button from years and years and years ago. And why is he so important? Well, he's a Mises. He's a Mises economics representative. He was one of the very few representatives in Congress that understood economics and understood the Austrian School of Economics, the Mises School. They're synonymous, of economics, which is a very honest and free system, so that people could keep more of their money and invest it in their businesses and the things that they wanted to in freedom. And, with a very good definition of what money is, what hard money is, and the risks that we take of the seen and the unseen, the broken window fallacy, all of that I learned from the Austrian School of Economics. And Lou Rockwell runs the Mises Institute, and I think he was I know that he backed Ron Paul for president, and I don't know if he played a part in his campaign. Um, I had four little children at the time, so um, but this is something very, very, very important that happened that has to do with Richard's case. And everybody has asked me over these almost 1,000 days, what does this have to do with Richard? What does the COVID have to do with Richard? What does the Walmart case have to do with Richard? What does the what Mealy is doing, what the Secretary of the Army is doing? What does Ukraine have to do with Richard? What does all of these cases have to do with Richard, and the border problem, and what's happening with Trump, and the election, and J6, January 6th. What does that have to do with Richard? And y'all, it's all connected because actions have consequences. Actions have consequences, and they move out the people that we have in power. So the actions are the movers and shakers. Remember, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe said it was the failures that drove us to change policy. But he got it wrong, or he didn't want to say it totally in truth, and that is that it was the exposure of the failures that drove, in the Vanessa Guillen case, that drove the Army to make the changes in policies. And Richard is the first CONUS Dust 1 missing soldier in U.S. Army history. But let me talk about that for a minute, because that was the People First initiative that came out of General McConville's office. And I think it was all an attempt of cover up. Cover up. Let me see if I can get this a little bit better here. Yeah. That this is all a cover up. And Richard is one of the things that they wanted covered up. Because absolutely, in these piles, we have the reports from Intel, from leaks, you see, from Intel, from CNN leaks, from NBC leaks, from El Paso Times leaks, from the work of Kyle Rimsky, David Martin, Kristen Lamb. All of these leaks are coming out, and there's more. Daniel Burundi from El Paso Times. These leaks are coming out and heavily reported on, and it seems like in a shadow government. And I'm just going to tell you very basic things that we have found out that we really feel like have a lot of validity. The very important things we're still working on behind the scenes. And this drove us to be able to write the letters and send them off today to Veronica Escobar, Representative Cover Up Veronica, and also Governor Abbott, that is also in trouble. And we're formulating, of course, letters to Ted Cruz and many, many others, and doing FOIAs. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are going on. But I want to tell you the things that I can tell you. And that is, before we even knew that Richard was missing, they had already found the remains of Richard. Okay? They found the remains of Richard before we even knew that Richard was missing. Okay? That's a huge shocker. And because we have been made essentially the investigator, the ones that find the leads, the ones that go through these leaks the leaks and the leaks and the leaks, this illegal sharing of information, or in our case, withholding information they should have given us a long time ago. You see? So it can work both ways. This information should have been given to us a long time ago. And because we have been made, the team Find Richard Halliday, the investigators of our son's murder, we don't even have time to grieve for him because we don't have the big staffs. We have been deserted. We have been left alone even after we have commissioned, as the people in the United States, agency after agency after agency. You know, we have to have Homeland Security after 911. Where are they? We have to have these DAs. Crime is going up. We have to have more attorney AUSAs. We have to have, and I wrote this down because this is some of the information that was kept from us. Uh-oh. I messed up my, there. Because I want to share that with you. This is some of the information that has been kept from us. And the most important thing that was kept from us that we did not know is that the jurisdiction on Richard is concurrent and joint. It's a joint jurisdiction. That means that the DA and the AUSAs, including the Attorney General there for the Western District of Texas, absolutely had a duty to reach out to us. Absolutely needed to reach out to us to inform us of all the things that they could do to us. Absolutely, Representative Veronica Escobar needed to reach out to us because she can help us, you see. And what the system has done is they tell you, you have to reach out to them. You have to do this. You have to notify them. And I understand there's some reciprocal work that needs to be done. But in the case of a missing U.S. soldier during the absolute accountability bomb on the U.S. Army for Vanessa Guillen, for Austin Hawk, for Enrique Roman Martinez, which, you know, they should have had more accountability in all of these cases, and for Caleb Smither, and for Asia Graham, and for Gregory Morales, Wendell Morales, and also for, you know, I'm trying to think of all of the accountability bombs that needed to come down. They were raining down, especially Vanessa Guillen was raining down on the military. And all of a sudden, on the 7th of July, they announced that they have Vanessa's bludgeoned, cut up, contorted, cut up, burnt, beheaded, covered in concrete, covered in lime and concrete remains. Okay? Vicious and sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, whatever, you know. I don't care how you look at it. It was a bomb. It was a bomb. And this is all in the middle of the COVID mess that was very convenient. Because you have to understand, we have a military industrial complex that is worth trillions, billions and trillions. And that's just one DOD, right? That's just the DOD. And they have failed, from what I know, it may be more, 5 audits in a row. Trillions of dollars missing. Trillions of dollars unaccounted for. And in El Paso alone, 20,000 children unaccounted for. 20,000 minors unaccounted for. And this was like what, last year? And there's more. There's more. I haven't even touched on the illegal, the drug and narcotics, criminal syndicate. I haven't touched on the pornography production, marketing, distribution from their own servers. They have special servers that you can just download from. And if you can't do that, they'll airdrop it to you. They'll airdrop all of this porn. And, when that becomes a norm, it gets boring. And so they have to go into like child sex porn. It's always another level downward into the abyss, into hell. And this is what's happening. And I haven't even touched on the ATF involvement in our son's case, which means guns and explosives. So you have alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. I'm starting to know all of this stuff, y'all. I'm getting a huge education, not to my, choice, not my choice, because the CID and Lieutenant Colonel Sean Bernabe appointed us, essentially, the investigators for our own son's murder. And they knew then, they knew before they even met with us, that Richard's remains were found. We're working on the locations. We have several different locations because there's all this information that was so confusing. And I think that this will straighten out a lot of the confusion. And the confusion was that there were many locations being, looked at, searched. And they had found Richard. Well, that is because the information that we're getting, and like I said, we have no time to grieve, is that Richard was in parts. And partial remains were here, partial remains were there, partial remains were over there, and they did everything that they could to try to hide this vicious crime. The perpetrators, the criminals, the murderers. And they were devious, and this was planned out. The information that we have, if it's correct, and we're trying to confirm it all, but it's over and over and over and over again. It's repeated over and over and over and over again. It's not saying these shadow news agencies, they're not saying, oh, Richard is in Cancun, Mexico with a girl. That's not what they're saying. Not one of them. Not one of them is saying, oh, don't worry, he walked away, he'll come back. Not one of them. Even though that was in social media by Richard's first sergeant that said, well, you've heard about the Vanessa Guillen case, right? Well, let me assure you, this is not that. No, this is not that. Because at least when they found the remains of Vanessa, they informed the family. They did not try to cover it up. But what they did is they learned in July, and so Vanessa went missing in April of 2020, and they did their utmost to not find Vanessa. But they weren't prepared for the family. They weren't prepared for the vigilance. They were not prepared for the other groups to support that family. They weren't prepared for people in Killeen and the surrounding area and on Fort Hood that were sick and tired of our service members being victims by their own and covered up to come together and rally for Vanessa. They weren't prepared for that, and they stumbled. But by July 7th, they had learned their lessons, and many people were held accountable. Not enough, absolutely not enough, and the system was not repaired. The system was not retrenched, and so the mess was still there. The sludge of the corruption of the criminal syndicate was still there. It needs to be retrenched, and the sludge is there. The corruption is there, and that is why when Richard was reported missing on the 23rd of July, 24th of July, the dates are not quite clear because of all the cover-up. They had perfected, they thought they had perfected how they could cover up the brutal murder of another soldier. This is all my assessment. This is my very reasoned opinion with lots of evidence to back it up. We're almost at 1,000 days. Not once did the command contact us to tell us our son was missing, because they knew he was dead. They already had his remains, because the reports are that as early as July 28th, we're looking to see if it was July 29th. If they found the remains on July 28th and reported it on July 29th of 2020, y'all, 2020. And then again on August 7th, because there's going to be several little dates in that time period, because Richard's remains were in parts and at different locations. Someone with surgical skill had to do it. I assure you, this is not that. Someone with some surgical skill had to do this. So, not once did the command say, "We have bad news. We have recovered your son's remains." Not once did they tell us that Richard was a whistleblower, and indeed he was. I cannot stress enough what I'm about to tell you. You have to really repeat this to everyone that you know. Richard did not feel confident enough, or he was absolutely blown off. And I know for a fact that he said to me over and over, so many times I can't even tell you, "Mom, the leadership is so bad. They are so bad. Don't ask me, but they are so bad. I don't want to be promoted to NCO. I do not want to go green to gold. I do not want to stay in the Army. I really don't want to stay in this unit. I'd rather be deployed again. I do not, this it's so, do not ask me, when are you going to make E5? I do not want it. They are so bad. And so he had no confidence at all as a young man and no respect at all for his leadership. Now, respect is earned. And it wasn't like he didn't know how to take orders and be respectful, because Richard was the distinguished honor graduate for his cycle in basic training and AIT. And that's why I put up the video, the TikTok video, to let people know what the witness testimony was during that time. But he had no confidence at all in his leadership there at Fort Bliss. And it seems to be so poisonous, so polluting, so toxic that it tainted Representative Veronica, cover up Escobar, cover up Veronica, and also Bill Hicks, the DA, and also anyone that steps in those positions at the AUSA, and the Attorney General Jaime Esparza, because they failed to even reach out to us. And don't tell me that Richard's remains were found and they didn't know. That Richard was missing and they didn't know. They knew. They knew, and they didn't even reach out to us. So not only did the United States Army fail to contact us, but those that have a duty to protect the land and the people, to have oversight over Fort Bliss, to watch what's happening on Fort Bliss, and protect the volunteer sons and daughters of this republic, the environment that they're in. Give them safety. What they always tell us, we've got to keep you safe. We need to have more agencies so we can keep you safe. We need to have more law enforcement officers so we can keep you safe. And yet they failed. They're failing. We need to have more doctors to keep you safe. Fail. We need to have more taxpayers' money so we can have a nicer country. Fail. We need to have more property taxes so we can have better schools. Fail. Pretty buildings, pretty desks, pretty laboratories, pretty gymnasiums, pretty coliseums, or all the sport things, whatever, do not make for a good education. Do not preserve the character of our children. Do not fight the vices. Do not grow the virtues. Nope. You know who I learned that from? George Washington Carver. If you don't know who George Washington Carver is, he's called the Peanut Man. He saved the South. He saved the South. The South was dependent on cotton, and the boll weevil got to the cotton because they had overworked the land, and the plant got weak, and the boll weevil came in and had its way with the cotton, and the economy in the South was broken. And here comes George Washington Carver, an orphan, adopted by some Germans, and sent to his school, but more importantly, given a real foundation in Christian faith, in the Bible, and the ideology of the Christian faith. And he was so strong in that ideology that he used the Bible as his guide in his laboratory, a pretty homemade laboratory. He wasn't rich, at Tuskegee. And people would send him checks. He had drawers full of checks. And he had to find a way to refortify the land so that they could grow cotton once again and it stay healthy. Because once you're weak, once your immune system is weak, same with plants, then the bugs start coming in, right? The bugs start coming in, the disease starts coming in. But when you're strong, there's a different energy, and the bugs stay away, and you're much healthier. So he found a plant. He found a couple plants, but the main plant that is the peanut. But what do you do with a peanut? There was no such thing as peanut butter and jelly sandwiches before George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver is the father of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because he found a way, hundreds of ways that we could use the peanut. Everything about that plant. And he was so successful that he saved the South, because you see, the peanut refortifies the soil. And so he had to find a way to make the peanut profitable for the farmers. And he did it. We have peanut butter, but he made rubber out of it, and rubber out of the peanut oil, and also out of the husk of the peanut, the shell. And Henry Ford wanted to make him a partner. He turned it down. He wanted his laboratory. So my point is that you don't need fancy laboratories. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you don't need it to absolutely be a blessing to the world. To do something good. To learn, to really learn how to be a blessing. To learn how to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And have your name live through history. So I love the story. I love reading about the life of George Washington Carver and everything that he has done for us. And so what I'm saying is, we right now know that we have been lied to over and over and over again. And now I'm going to play one of my heroes in life, and that is Ron Paul. Oh, it's a single photo. Let's see. It's a Twitter. Good.
We don't have any resemblance. There's been a coup. We don't have any resemblance to a government that believes in a republic. We don't have honest money. We don't have integrity. We don't even have people in Washington that even pretends, that you're supposed to tell the truth. Remember just recently there was a congressperson that won, and he won by putting on his resume just a bunch of lies. and the other ones got hysterical. The other congressmen telling lies like this. And I got to thinking, well, how many of these people that were complaining about this guy telling lies, how many of them lied when they raised their hand up and swore to uphold the Constitution? Now, that's a lie that really has consequences. Actually, you could probably make fun and make a little joke because his jokes weren't, everybody knew he was fibbing, but the real lies are being told, and that is our big problem. But I do believe there has been a coup, and it's been taken over, and if I want to just put the date in my mind, and anybody could pick probably any date in the last 100 years, but I have picked November 22nd, 1963.
What happened on that day?
That was the day Kennedy was murdered by our government.
Wow.
By the CIA. There's been a coup in my mind, and anybody could pick probably any date in the last 100 years, but I have picked November 22nd, 1963.
What happened on that day?
That was the day Kennedy was murdered by our government.
Wow.
By the CIA. There's been a coup. We don't have any resemblance.
Okay. So why did I want to play that? Because let me see how I can X that out now. Yeah. Because did you hear what he said? There's been a coup, and he believes that it was November 22nd, 1963, which is very interesting. That's only a couple years before they took prayer, or maybe even a year, was it 1964, where they took prayer out of the schools. Okay, so they started with the schools. And we have gotten lies and lies and lies, and coercion, collaboration to take over this country since then. That's what he's saying. And there's no integrity. It's just lies upon lies. And, you can laugh at this congressman that said, on his CV, he just listed a bunch of lies about himself. He just embellished himself with a lot of lies. And, people was like, what? And laughed and whatever. I don't think there was any consequences. Was he removed? I think he was. I don't know. But the real lie, he's saying the real lie that has real consequences is our Congress and, all these law enforcement agencies, the representatives, the senators, the judges, the DOD, the Department of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and on and on and on we can go, that raise their hand, that say they're going to defend the Constitution, the land and the people, and they don't. They serve foreign and domestic enemies, and they don't defend the Constitution. That is the real lie. And it has become a band of robbers. A land without justice is just a band of robbers. And I want to include the Department of Justice in this, of course, with the AUSAs, with, in our case, Jaime Esparza, and also the DA, Bill Hicks, and Greg McDonald, and Ian Hanna, and, so many others that, they might be very, very nice people. Okay. But you get into these situations and the society and the system, let's just say, manipulates you and turns you into a bad person. Because we, Representative cover up Veronica. This is the system. Her position has not brought the best out in her. Matter of fact, she is a failure. And not only a failure, a criminal. Because do not tell me that she did not know that the remains of our son were found. And how I know a lot of you are saying, wait a minute, you don't have the remains. You don't have the remains, Pat. You better be careful. Look, I've thought very, very hard about this. How much evidence do we need? How much evidence do we need? How gullible do we need to be? How long do we need to give our patience and give our trust when it has been breached and broken and abused over and over and over again? From the very beginning, they did not contact us. None of them. When we were contacted, we were thrown out. When we contacted them, they threw us out. The Army threw us out, and it was a collaboration. I believe that it was a collaboration with Representative Cover-Up Veronica, the DA, and also the Attorney General. Now, I might be wrong there, but why didn't anybody give us any kind of hand? We were dumped out in the cold. My dad, we were desperate. That's why we even went to social media. My dad went to the Navy, NCIS, and told the story. And he called me up and he said, ma'am, I'm from the NCIS. This is my name. This is who I am. How can I help you? And I just cried like a baby, y'all. I just cried like a baby. And he was like, ma'am, are you okay? Why are you crying? And I'm like, because you are the first person that, and you don't even have that much power, but you said, how can I help you? I can't help you a lot, but however I can help you, I will help you. And just someone saying, how can I help you? Did the DA call to say, how can I help you? Did the Attorney General call to say, how can I help you? Did anybody, Representative Escobar's office? What happened to Susie? What happened to Susie? Why didn't she call us at the time and say, how can we help you? So, because the social media Find Richard Halliday became Team Find Richard Halliday, we were able to, with popular demand, expose the dereliction of duty of the military, what they were doing in the midst of Vanessa Guillen and also Austin Hawk, even though a lot of people didn't know about Austin Hawk. But because Vanessa Guillen was definitely on the radar, they brought us back in. They put Richard back on the rolls and gave us a casualty assistance officer, which we were like, what? They gave us a casualty assistance officer. Now, that to me was an indication. Now it makes sense because we asked them to change the name from casualty assistance officer to liaison. But I think they all knew. They all knew that Richard was already, his partial remains were already found, and that we needed a casualty assistance officer. That was like a little oops. What they didn't tell us is that this is the important part. This is a very important part, and I hope you share it. That Richard already had a file with the CID there at Fort Bliss. He already had a file. And what the information that we are getting, that in that very small CID office there at Fort Bliss, Special Agent, CID Special Agent Tavita Nusa was assigned to his case. What was the case about? The case was about Richard going to the Child Protective Services and complaining, making major complaints and turning in sex videos. That's what that case was about. And what we are getting in our information, and this is why I'm transparent and this is why I'm on here, is so that Special Agent, well, he's not. He lost his badge, right? We know he lost his badge. That Tavita Nusa, who is retired now, can give us a call and tell us, because it's getting very, very serious. Because it's saying that Tavita Nusa breached his duty. He betrayed his duty. He betrayed service members. He betrayed the Army. He betrayed his country by leaking. Now, this is how they leak. And I want you to listen to the next video and you will be blown away. But the leak is that they take pictures of the files. They do screenshots. They take picture, or they just take pictures with their phones, and then they share illegally. They share those files, and that was shared with Leilani Hart, and that was distributed to others. We have heard numerous times that Richard's files were leaked to others, not just to Leilani Hart. And what that did is it violated the Whistleblower Protection Act. Tavita Nusa, by doing that, by a special agent in the CID doing that, he violated the Whistleblower Protection Act, which illegally exposed Richard to harm and severe and constant retaliation. What happened to Richard? Severe and continuous retaliation, absolutely all documented, and harm, that he was murdered, and that his remains, partial remains, he was murdered brutally and surgically cut up, and his partial remains found in different locations. That's what that means. Let's listen to this next video. See if I can find it.
And the fact that the publication...
Start it from the beginning. Now this video is talking about... This video is talking about the breach of all of those intelligence files. And the intelligence files are that we have boots on the ground, and we've had boots on the ground in Ukraine against Russia. And there's a lot more information. So let's listen to this. But there's something that they say that really applies to our case.
Didn't have anything or much of anything to say about the leaks themselves, the substance of the leaks. Do they not care that the American public has been lied to about a proxy war that we're fighting right now?
Well, that's not the point of the corporate propagandists, Laura, and that's what the New York Times and Washington Post have become. They're not interested in the substance of the charges, the fact that we have U.S. troops in Ukraine, apparently in a hot war with Russia, which, again, is one of the world's largest nuclear powers. And, again, we're not fighting, goat herders in the Middle East. We're picking a fight with one of the world's largest nuclear powers. I think that would be important for the American people to understand. But that's not the point of the corporate propagandists. They're the mouthpieces and attack dogs of the administrative state, really auxiliaries of the state now, because apparently along with what appears to be a CIA contractor, Bellingcat, we're able to track down this whistleblower. But in their minds, not all whistleblowers are created equally. If you're a good whistleblower, it means you're helping the administrative state. You're attacking potential existential threats like the duly elected President of the United States, Donald Trump. But if you actually expose and embarrass the regime, you're not a whistleblower. You're, in fact, an enemy of the state. And I think the part that is really troubling for us to have a truly free society, you have to have a free and honest press to actually keep government accountable. But instead, they become the propagandists for it because it's not about the truth. It's about promoting the approved narrative of the administrative state, which apparently, Laura, is a perpetual war in Ukraine in which hundreds of millions, if not billions of U.S. dollars have been embezzled, have disappeared. And yet we continue on. And now apparently we're on a path to a hot war with Russia. The American people deserve to know the truth. And I think that's his greatest sin. Jack Teixeira's greatest sin in a late stage republic is that he embarrassed the regime by exposing the truth.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And Victor, to that point, the leak is apparently causing the Biden administration to rethink government surveillance of the web, saying that they're looking at expanding how it monitors social media sites and chat rooms after U.S. intel failed to realize classified docs were circulated online for weeks. Victor, gosh,
Months.
If we were conspiracy theorists, we'd say this was almost planned.
Yeah. The problem isn't that they haven't been surveilling the web. We know from Twitter the FBI was hiring people basically for $3 million a year. They're surveilling the wrong people. They're surveilling American citizens that pose no threat, and they're ignoring the people on the web that do. I think the bottom line is that we're terrifying our allies, because when you look what Macron's doing with the Chinese, or as you mentioned, South Korea doesn't want to get involved with the sanctions, or we look at Saudi Arabia has flipped with this non-aggression pact, and then India is buying oil, and we see Egypt. These were all solid allies. But when they look at this Pentagon and the FBI by association, and they see the balloon fiasco and how they lied about it and said that they didn't surveil very many sites when we know they did. They look at the Afghanistan debacle, the greatest humiliation, I think, in American history, and they lied about it and said it was a success and not very many people were left. And now they see this, and they're revealed, and then the President of the United States said, well, it doesn't look like there's that much in there. I think they're distancing themselves. They said, you know what? At least for now, the United States is too dangerous an ally, and it's not reliable, and more importantly, it's incompetent. And we're going to either stay neutral or take a look at this new coalition that's forming against it. And it's terrifying. These people are incompetent, but they're incompetently dangerous. And that's what's scary. They're putting all of their resources and other agendas that have nothing to do with the efficacy of the Pentagon or the quality of intelligence. And they should all be let go for all of these serial disasters.
Retrench.
Yeah, well, there's never any accountability, Ned. No one ever gets fired. No one was fired after Afghanistan. No one's fired after the balloon fiasco. No one's fired because if no one's fired, this has to be their policy. This is their goal.
A secret.
It is their goal. After a series of coincidences, it ceases to be a coincidence. You realize it's intentional. And when there are no consequences for really egregious behavior, guess what? It's only going to get worse, because if there's no consequences now, they'll continue to go down this path, and who knows what will come next. But it really does highlight, as Victor was pointing out, the importance of true leadership. I mean, think about how quickly things have devolved in 2 years not only domestically, but on the international stage for this country because of the change in leadership in the White House. It's amazing to me and how staggeringly quick it has happened. But it does remind you again of the importance of next year's election. If we want to turn the corner, we better start thinking about new leadership in the White House if we want to reestablish ourselves as a trusted leader on the international stage.
Well, apparently the chairman of the House Intel Committee, Mike Turner, he was torqued off today about all of this. Watch.
What do we need to do to make certain that our classified information is held more closely? How do we find these people before they do this, before classified documents are compromised?
Well, I mean, these are good questions, Victor, but this is part of the oversight that the Republicans are supposed to be doing.
Yes.
These
and
systems are very
also
complex.
Oversight
Yeah, they're not so complex that a 21-year-old kid
Escobar
can't
instead of doing her
just
job,
print them out, fold them up in his pocket, and then
and
take
that's
pictures
why
of them and post them on the
Fort Bliss is
web.
such a mess.
So Republicans, deserve some responsibility here too.
Yeah. They do. I
Yes.
think I could offer a modest suggestion that maybe the person who leaked the Roe versus Wade preliminary report should have been indicted and found out indicted. Maybe the person like James Comey who leaked a confidential conversation with the President of the United States through a third party, the New York Times, should have been prosecuted. Maybe Anonymous that bragged in an op-ed that he was deliberately obstructing and releasing information about the Trump administration's Homeland Security. Maybe he should have been prosecuted.
Right.
But this young 21-year-old was pretty smart. He just said, there's no penalty, there's no consequences, none of these other guys got off. And so he didn't think there was any big deal. And if we had had deterrence, he wouldn't have dared do it.
Victor and Ned, thank you both.
So I played that whole thing because absolutely this young National Guardsman, he is going to be put through the ringer like the January 6th. For what? For releasing intel like everybody else is releasing. Where is Tavita Nusa in all of this? Right? Who, if all of the, you have to understand, Tavita Nusa put Richard in danger and escalated the retaliation, the continuous retaliation, the losing of 3 ranks and all of that. This unit was so corrupt because Richard exposed them. Absolutely exposed them. And that's why we have had the bullying and the harassment and the fake sites, because over on the fake site are the first sergeants, are the first lieutenants, is the PA group, the PAO group, right? So it is exposing some major criminal syndicate or several criminal actions in one big criminal syndicate right there on Fort Bliss. And child sex trafficking, even child sexual assault on an 8-year-old, and then even with women, we're hearing he was reporting on women being raped and filmed. Richard was put into so much danger, and there's no accountability. There's only retaliation, severe and continuous retaliation. And that's why nobody contacted family. That's why there was so much pushback to us through these, we're almost at 1,000 days. That explains so much. And why do we give this weight so much weight that we can come on a live stream and say, we believe the FBI is covering up the discovery and the remains of our son, the partial remains. We don't even know, because we have only information that's saying that they found partial remains in these spots. So have they found all the spots? And is that what Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe was doing during Christmas at Kamal Jabul, a fake Afghanistan training center right there on Fort Bliss, when he was looking for the remains of Richard? He wasn't looking for the live Richard. He was looking for the remains of Richard. The FBI were not looking for the alive Richard in Juarez, Mexico. They were looking for the remains of Richard in Juarez, Mexico. And for the FBI to risk going over to Mexico and looking in a foreign country for the remains of a soldier that we have been told was in uniform when they found. And we have gotten confirmation through this, well, I shouldn't say confirmation, but we have gotten additional information that is talking about Richard's remains being found in uniform. In Mexico. And we have the father-in-law with major ties to El Paso and might have major ties into Juarez, that says his, he is with the FBI, and the FBI were looking in 5 different places for Richard, not for Richard, live Richard, but for the remains of Richard in Juarez, and they found him. And it's bad news, he's dead. Shh. But they're still looking. Right? They're still looking because they don't have all of Richard. They just have partial remains. Now you figure that all makes sense now, right? Remember how the cashier was like, well, he lost me there. He lost me there. That's because they had partial remains of Richard, so they knew he was dead, but they were missing some of his parts. And he's dead. And that's in October of 2020. And he was very confident. And shh, why is that a secret? Shh, shh, it's a secret. It's a cover-up. Cover-up Veronica. Absolutely, Sean Bernabe, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, that got a star for covering this up, I believe, is the worst type of criminal. The worst type of criminal. Because they wear our beautiful uniforms with our beautiful shiny stars. They desecrate our uniform, our stars, our military, our country, our Constitution. And they want to be promoted, and they accept the promotion. They have no integrity. They have no honor. They are the worst type of criminal. They don't just get looking like a criminal so that everyone knows they're a criminal. No, they look like they are the defender of the Constitution, and yet they are the worst type of criminal. Same thing with General McConville. Same thing with cover-up Veronica. Same thing with DA. And they could be nice people, but they've gone astray. And they've gone astray in the worst type of way. And Bill Hicks has gone astray. He should have contacted us. And today we faxed him. We faxed him our letters. And so I'll share the letter with you because I think it's really, really important. And where's Jaime Esparza? That we still have not even gotten an acknowledgement for what we have sent them weeks ago. These people need to be arrested. They're the worst type of criminal. because they sit in their beautiful buildings that we have provided them. Eating and drinking off of the earnings that we have given them. And yet, we have commissioned them to defend the Constitution, to preserve justice, speedy trials. And they betray us and our country and our children, the future. The future. So I want to, I'll show you the video of Richard real quick. So this one says, I went to basic training with Halliday and he was very kind. I'm so upset he hasn't been found yet, and I hope he's safe wherever he is. I went to basic training with Halliday and he came up on top at basic. So this one says, this one says, I really hope he's not dead. He was such a kind soul when I met him in basic. Thank you, Steph. Here, this Mr. Gabby is being a Gabby. The military is nothing but toxic to those who actually want to help and change, because those in charge ran fast and got promoted with zero intelligence, or they became the cover-up of the criminal syndicate. And you heard that with these three. That you can do all kinds of crime and there's no accountability. And you heard it from Ron Paul. I wanted to remind everybody about the Sutherland Springs shooting victims and $144.5 million settlement that went to them because the Air Force failed to report the continuous character of this murderer, the shooter, that he was violent and also had mental health issues. So that is very, very important because it held the Air Force accountable in this one instance just last week. So that was absolutely very, very important. The FBI, so this is another really interesting video of, let me see if this is it. Let me see if this is it. No. Texera, is this it right here? Let's see. Sorry. Some good music, though. I have to say that. 2 seconds. Okay, here we go. I'll turn this off pretty quick. I just want you to hear something very important. Guess that's all they have. Okay, it's different than what I heard. but I saved this because what the announcer is saying is that the way he shared is he took pictures. He just took pictures. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly what we are hearing about what happened in the CID there at Fort Bliss, is that Tavita Nusa just took pictures. There is another name mentioned about who took pictures. And that complaint hasn't been lodged with the CID and the FBI. I can say Tavita Nusa because a complaint has been lodged with the CID and the FBI about Tavita Nusa leaking those files to Leilani Hart. The other name we're looking into, and there's an agency that we're also looking into that may have the remains. Well, let's just say was a major player in this whole cover-up. There's so many major players, okay? You know, so many people had to go along with this. And, you know, another point that I want to make is people go, how can so many play along with this? Well, we saw it during COVID, didn't we? We saw it during COVID. And don't forget that we did something so extraordinarily, just so incredible. They probably, I don't know. And what am I talking about? When those CID and FBI complaints went in about the leaking of and endangering of Richard through the CID agent Tavita Nusa to Leilani Hart and many others, and exposing him illegally, violating the Whistleblower Protection Act. When that all happened, the next thing we knew, when we got the call and we were putting that, because we're so transparent, putting that information out there, we started getting, right after that, the vile and vulgar phone intimidation attack that was concerned. It was 4 phone numbers, and they were just leaving messages that were vile and vulgar, trying to do some psyop with us, trying to intimidate us, threaten us, really harm us mentally, and make us feel like we were in danger, make us try to get so fed up with being so abused that we would just drop this whole search for our son. And we turned those in. We let the CID know they were happening. The Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe knew that was happening to us. Bill Hicks knew that was happening to us. Veronica Escobar knew that was happening to us. Ted Cruz knew that was happening to us. And Jaime Esparza knew that was happening to us. So did Greg McDonald. They all knew that was happening to us. And yet they did nothing. They did nothing. And, well, you know, you can't trace a burner phone. Baloney, because we found a way to trace a burner phone. And we did just that. And we traced all 4 of those numbers. And those 4 numbers, each one of them traced back 3 numbers. So each number was a team of 3. Okay, a team. All 3 numbers were right there in Santa Clara, California. The center of censorship and controlling the narratives of many people on social media. That's where the headquarters was. That's where the epicenter of the control of social media and the censoring of social media, that's where it was, there at Stanford. And that's not me. That is at all has been exposed in the hearings in Congress. That's the epicenter. And I thought it was interesting that Clem Coward has some kind of connection to that. I just think that's interesting. The next number was from Denmark, from a location right there in Copenhagen by the FBI headquarters. Because we have an embassy, and the embassy is where the FBI is, right? And then the NATO, where the NATO base is. And that is also interesting, isn't it? The third team of numbers came from South Korea, right there, Gimpo, and which is very interesting, and right there by the embassy, the communications building, and the American embassy where the FBI is, and then the fourth team of numbers was the White House, y'all. The White House, I know it gets very emotional. The White House and the City Hall in Toronto in a very luxurious, and I showed it on one of my live streams. I'll do it tomorrow too. An apartment. Now, there's other little locations in there, and they all need to be looked at. Who was staying there? What's going on? But we gave those locations a year ago, and it has been crickets. Not even an acknowledgement. Not even an acknowledgement, y'all. Oh my gosh. And isn't it interesting that after we traced those numbers, they stopped? That's interesting. So we did something very extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. And thank God for that. Thank God, because it ended. So not only did we find out who Hemasocha was, no thanks to the CID, no thanks to the command there, no thanks to anybody else that should be helping us. We also found out who the Dollar General man was. He wasn't just nobody, he was somebody very important. When you are the father-in-law of the lieutenant colonel in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM, that's very important, because that's Richard's command, and that's where the op boards are. There's no coincidences, okay? When we found out that Anthony Swafford was a military police soldier there on Fort Bliss, and that he was dissuading people from searching for Richard because he believed that Richard had a bad character, along with his family, because he was not too nice to us. And he was convinced that Richard had a bad character. He wouldn't even listen to what we had to say. And where did he get convinced from? Who hypnotized him? Who hypnotized him and put those swirly, whirly things in his eyes when it came to Halliday? It was a senior leader that spoke from the guard mount to the military police on Fort Bliss. And Richard at that time was a missing soldier. Yeah. Beautiful face. Always. Anyway, so handsome. Beautiful eyes. And anyway, really handsome. I know I'm biased because he's my son. And they chopped him up, y'all. They dismembered him. Because he was trying to protect children. He was trying to protect women. And our military chose their lies, their criminal syndicate over women and children. But Richard didn't. So we need your help to get the word out, because this is a job for every Gold Star family, for every family of missing soldiers, because we have a real opportunity here with the work that Judge Javier Rodriguez started with the Sunland Springs case. That our military is culpable, or they are responsible and need to be held accountable to what, in this case, especially in this case, because I haven't even told you about the canine story. I haven't even told you about the Hardy Hayes story, the PI story. I haven't told you about our CAO. I haven't told you about so many other FBI informants and so many other things that absolutely scream out that this is a cover-up job. And now we know what they were covering up. They were covering up the murder and the discovery of Richard's remains, because they did not want to escalate the accountability that was happening, or not even happening much, in the Vanessa Guillen case. Because you have to remember, Vanessa Guillen's remains were found the very, very end of June, and they were identified and released to the public on the 7th of July, 2020. And Richard went missing on the 23rd of July, 2020, and his remains were found the 28th or the 29th of July, that same month that Vanessa Guillen's remains were publicly disclosed as being hers, as being her. The whirlwind was going down their throat, and they chose themselves over their duty, their oath to defend the Constitution, their obligation to protect and serve their soldiers, their service members. And this is why we're in the state that we are in. It's a mess. It is a gooey, mucky mess. And we need to retrench. We need to retrench and get the goo out. So, how are we going to do that? And that is to release this information, release these files. We know that these files exist of the discovery of Richard Halliday, of the partial remains of Richard Halliday. We know that he was dismembered. Now that takes surgery skill. And so we wrote Vanessa Guillen, and there he is. Look at him. He's so happy there. We wrote Vanessa Guillen. Now, I've gotten some feedback that I'm too lightweight on. Oh, sorry. That's a slip. On Cover Up Veronica. That I'm too easy on her. Well, this is for everybody. There's steps. And I want to make sure that Rob and I want to make sure that everybody understands. Because if we're going to hold these public servants accountable for high crimes and misdemeanor, high crimes, y'all. I mean, we must put the death penalty squarely on the table for these crimes. If we are going to call for such severe punishment for this absolute betrayal of not only our son, our family, but for our national security, for our country, for all the other service members, then we need everyone to understand the steps that we're trying to take properly to do this right, to tell everybody how she has breached her duty, that she has committed high crimes and misdemeanors worthy of severe punishment, and that she chose cover up instead of her duty, instead of her oath, honoring her oath. And she has betrayed and misused her position, which is huge power. And so that's why we wrote this letter. We wrote this letter because we are convinced that she is so far deep and covered up in her mucky crime that she won't be able to respond with any kind of movement, with any kind of help in getting the remains of our son that were discovered back to us so that he could be properly buried. So this is what we wrote her. Dear Representative Escobar, we are writing to you today to bring attention to the case of our son, Distinguished Honor Graduate Richard Halliday, assigned to Delta Battery 143 ADA at Fort Bliss, Texas, who went missing on July 23, 2020, and was later found murdered. As parents who have lost our beloved son, we are in anguish and pain, and we urge you to help us seek justice for Richard. We believe that Richard's case is not only devastating for our family, but also a matter of national importance and national security in the defense of our Constitution. It is imperative that the truth about what happened to Richard is uncovered, and that those responsible for his death are held accountable. The circumstances surrounding Richard Halliday's disappearance and murder raise serious questions about the safety and well-being of all service members. It is crucial that we understand what happened to Richard and ensure that steps are taken to garner vital trust, confidence, and esprit de corps within our military and justice system. This means to build and maintain essential trust, confidence, and a sense of camaraderie among the members of the military and justice system. The circumstances surrounding Richard Halliday's disappearance and murder have created a sense of unease and concern about the safety and well-being of service members. It is important to understand what happened to Richard, not only to bring justice to our family, but also to ensure that steps are taken to prevent similar disgraces in the future. By initiating independent investigation into Richard's case, pressuring the U.S. military to cooperate fully with the investigation and advocating for the protection and rights of Richard's family. Congress can help to build trust and confidence within the military and justice system. This is essential for maintaining the morale and cohesion of our armed forces and for ensuring that they can effectively carry out their duties to protect our nation and not leak, really whistleblow. This young man, and I'm interrupting, sorry, but this young man was whistleblowing that our Pentagon, our 44 four-star generals and admirals are up to no good servicing foreign and domestic enemies instead of defending our Constitution by having boots on the ground, fighting in a war in Ukraine against Russia, putting us into essentially a precarious situation that could lead to World War III, the destruction of our country. And they're funneling money everywhere. I mean, the leaks, the whistleblower showed us what is truly going on, and he deserves a reward, because why not do it when everybody else is sharing illegally the information and they get nothing? They're not held accountable at all. So if Tavita Nusa can take pictures and put Richard in such, expose him to such evil, to such a severe continuous retaliation by his own command that leads to his murder and him being dismembered and thrown into shallow graves in the desert, what is to prevent anybody from doing this if nobody is held accountable? So we are deeply troubled by the discrepancies and secrets surrounding Richard's case and the lack of cooperation from certain military officials. It is clear to us that Richard was illegally exposed and put into danger prior to his disappearance, and that there has been a concerted effort to cover up this case to avoid accountability similar to the Vanessa Guillen case, and also, I have to say, the Austin Hawk case. I need to put that in there. Both of them right there. Austin Hawk case was in June of 2020, okay? June of 2020, June 17th of 2020, he was murdered. Richard went missing a little more than a month later. The failure of the military to fully cooperate with the investigations into Richard's case raises concerns about transparency and accountability in the armed forces. We must ensure that those responsible for investigating such cases have the resources and authority necessary to uncover the truth and to hold those responsible accountable. Now, everyone knows they have everything that they need. Everyone knows. But we're putting that in there because we want everyone to say, wait a minute, they have everything. They're so bloated. They have 44 four-star generals and admirals, and they only have 1,300,000 maybe at that, because so many are committing suicide. So many are taking mental health illness pills because they're having all kinds of mental health issues. So many are being kicked out because they didn't take the Cobra Strike, or disgusted by the military, that they don't even respect them enough to really, want to work in a esprit de corps kind of fashion, in a cohesive manner to make an army strong. World War II, we had 13 million plus, and only 7 generals. So we are so bloated, top heavy. We need to retrench. We need to get the scum out. We need to get the gook out. We need to get the hair clots out. We need to get them out because they're bringing us down. And I'm talking about Congress. I'm talking about our justice system. I'm talking about, this is a systemic problem. So as a member of Congress, cover up, Veronica. You have the power and the resources to help us get the answers and accountability that we seek. We urge you to use your position on the Congressional Judiciary, Ethics, Armed Services, and Democratic Policy and Communication Committees, as well as your membership in the Democratic Woman, Congressional Progressive, Hispanic, and New Democratic Coalition caucuses. 2, you have to remember, she's supposed to be advocating for women. She's supposed to be advocating for the Hispanic community. She's supposed to be advocating for the armed services. She's supposed to be advocating for justice. She's supposed to be advocating for ethics. She's supposed to be advocating for, democracy, right? And it's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite. She's a total failure. So she can use that power to initiate an independent investigation into Richard's case to ensure that all facts and evidence are examined impartially and transparently. Pressure the U.S. military to cooperate. They roll out the red carpet for her, so she can easily pressure the U.S. military to cooperate fully with the investigation and disclose any relevant information, like where are the remains of my son, right? That they may have been withholding, and they have. And we know that about so many things. An advocate for our rights and protection, right? Where's our protection? And ensure that we are not, she could call up Bill Hicks easily and say, hey, you need to reach out and offer them protection because they're in real trouble here. Because they're whistleblowing and they have whistleblower protection, this family, because they're whistleblowing on the disgraceful decisions that our U.S. Army made to cover up the murder and the death and the body of our son, Richard Halliday. Advocate for our rights and protection and ensure that we are not subjected to further harassment and threats. We implore you to act with urgency and intensity on this matter as we have been investigating as asked of us and waiting for far too long for justice and closure for our son. We are now approaching 1,000 days since our son, Private Richard Halliday, went missing on July 23, 2020, and was later found murdered. As a whistleblower who sought to protect the rights of women and children and prevent them from being sexually abused and exploited, Richard was a brave and dedicated soldier who made the ultimate sacrifice for his country. He didn't lockstep, y'all. And as his family and loved ones, we have been left with a profound sense of loss and the constant pain of not knowing what happened to Richard and why. We know, but where's his remains? We deserve answers and closure, and we are counting on Congress to help us achieve justice for Richard. Richard's case is a clear example of the dangers and risks that whistleblowers face when they speak out against the injustice and corruption. When he was illegally exposed, removing his protection, there was a severe and continuous effort to retaliate against him. This escalated the danger he was placed in. Furthermore, after his murder, there was a continued and deliberate attempt to cover up the case and avoid accountability, which is similar to the Vanessa Guillen, Fort Hood 2020, and Austin Hawk, Fort Stewart, 2020 cases. And we believe that Richard's death was, I'm glad I put that in. Richard's death was preventable and that justice needs to be served for him and his family. It is crucial that we honor Richard's memory by ensuring that whistleblowers are protected and that their concerns are taken seriously. We owe it to Richard to ensure that justice is served and that those responsible for his death and are held accountable. And we urge you to take action and initiate a congressional investigation into Richard's case and to use your position to advocate for the rights of whistleblowers and the protection of all service members. Congress has a responsibility to provide oversight of the military and ensure that it is operating in the best interests of the American people. No circumstances surrounding Richard's case demand a thorough and transparent investigation, and we urge you to take swift action to ensure that this happens. We believe that finding the truth about Richard's case and holding those responsible accountable is crucial not only for our family, but also for the well-being of our country, national security, and the defense of our Constitution. We appreciate your attention to this matter and look forward to hearing from you soon. Find Richard Halliday. So, wow. Yeah. And if you want to read, there's more. If you want to read the one that we sent to Greg Abbott. Yes, so Governor Abbott. That's really important too. So that's, I'll take your questions now. And we're still going through information. Turn this down. "39 comments. Wow. Okay, let's see. Top comments. Let's see. Wow. Yolanda. What they did to Richard. Yep. It is just really odd that all the other soldiers were found, yet Richard has not been found. Is odd. I still keeping my gut instinct that he is still alive. I share your lives as much as I can to the missing groups and post as much as I can to keep his flyer out there online. I pray and hope every day to make a difference. You have made such a difference, Kat, and we are noticing how much that you have worked for us, for Richard, and so we're very, very grateful. Have you reached out to Telemundo? Yeah, Diana is our contact there at Telemundo. I don't know if she's still there. And I really, really enjoyed working with her when I was in El Paso. They have not reached out to us. The silence is deafening. We haven't even talked about the situation with the PI. That's crazy. What about the lawyer? That's also crazy. So absolutely, this has been a huge, huge cover-up using lots and lots and lots of money and power. Okay? I'm just telling you. It has to be. Because that's the only thing that explains this disgraceful show of power. If they have his remains and request his remains, are you just being told they found his remains so you stop looking? Is it another false accusation, fake news situation, or is there actual proof? No, we're doing the FOIAs. We're doing the FOIAs, and we got this information just recently, and so we don't have the big staffs. I clean my own house, right? I do my own yard work. Rob and I do our own yard work. We have a life and we have to live, and we don't have these huge staffs. And so everything takes time, and we have to do these FOIAs and to ask if they have the remains of our son. Give us the remains of our son, right? And name names, because we have names. We have way more than what we're telling you at this point, because there's so many names involved. This required people that know how to get rid of bodies. Okay? This required a lot of things. This required a luring out of Richard to put him in more danger. This was a concerted effort. And and then the cover up, y'all. So this means there's a lot of people involved in the unit. That means that Richard's report included a lot of people, which means this was like a criminal syndicate. This was a criminal cabal. That's what makes sense. Okay, so we have to make a FOIA to certain agencies because we've gotten information about certain agencies. And right at this point, I think the FBI has the remains of our son. And everyone knows how corrupt the FBI is. I mean, you heard Ron Paul today say there was a coup starting in November of 1963, and that's how long we've let it fester and grow. Yeah. FOIA is not being processed in a timely manner. Oh, yeah. And then we have a FOIA for the Child Protective Services. That's 2 years. So I don't know. We need massive people. And we are going to have a prayer vigil. We've already organized that whole thing. And so as we get close for the 1,000 days, I'll let you know about that. But we are going to have a prayer vigil for Richard. You know, in your heart as a mother and a father, incited violence, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. They have victimized victims, in my opinion. From what the multiple articles stated, the other articles from other news agencies state, is it Richard Halliday? The other articles from other news agencies state it isn't Richard Halliday, but the original report never wrote an update stating that it isn't Richard. No update on identification of remains. Okay, so I'm going to put up some more reports that were made that said that remains were found, and y'all, some of them are claim in Mexico. And it's, I don't think it's a possibility that the Mexican government, who we'll be talking with shortly, has the remains of our son. I think that they handed over the remains of our son. Okay. But we were never told that, because I believe Richard's remains were primarily in Mexico in uniform, from everything that I'm reading. And this is not just from D. It seems like D is being vindicated. Oh, the public school is talking about taking Easter break away from the school, so they are trying to get rid of Jesus, Bible out of schools. Yeah. Yep. They held information to hamper finding Richard Halliday from the time of disappearance, in my not even in your opinion. They absolutely 100% have tried to sabotage the search for Richard Halliday from the very beginning. There is no doubt at all. We have so much evidence of them not just sabotaging, but using asymmetric warfare tactics on us and military operations to cover this up, to sabotage, to end the search for Richard Halliday. Everything that they could have done to find Richard, they didn't do. They didn't do. Because, see, the searches that they conducted when we got there, we're talking 2.5 months later, they already had the remains of Richard, but they were nervous. They were nervous. And that's why they didn't even have the esprit de corps to find Richard. Okay, they just said, oh, this is PT. Let's go out and kick around some, let's go out there and goof off. It is only a need to know basis to fulfill. And I heard that from so many soldiers. Okay. I heard that from so many soldiers. It is only a need to know basis to fulfill job duty, not just from whomever, whatever to review. Right. Sounds like, because also you have to see the whole pattern here. If they really cared about our soldiers, they'd get rid of the fentanyl. If they really cared about our soldiers, they wouldn't make our barracks a marketplace for illegal drugs. If they really cared about our soldiers, they would have a huge successful program on esprit de corps and the Medal of Honor ethos. If they really cared about our soldiers, they would not have co-ed barracks to fester, to what do you call it, to create an atmosphere ripe for rape and sexual harassment and worse, right? If they really cared about our soldiers, they wouldn't have brought in those young girls during COVID and paid them. If they really cared about our soldiers, they wouldn't have these frat parties every day. Absolutely no way. That's not Army strong. That is not Army ready. If they really cared about our soldiers, we wouldn't have so many mental health issues. There would be integrity and duty and loyalty and honor, just drilled all the time. If they really cared about our soldiers, they would not be grooming them to join these doggy sex cults, to be reared by these big dogs, right? Colonels promising, if you let me rear you, I'll give you a good OER so that you can get promoted. Hey, you go down to El Paso and you cover up this murder, the finding of his body, and we'll give you 2 stars. We'll promise you. If they really cared about our soldiers, they would not have called off the search for Vanessa Guillen after the Pelican case was found, all burnt up and everything. They would have doubled up. If they really cared about soldiers, they would have sponsored us to come to El Paso and rally, and they would never have told the unit to shut up, to not talk to us, to not talk to media. They would have had a town hall meeting inviting us and inviting the press. And if they really cared about soldiers, they would have absolutely allowed Texas EquiSearch to get involved with Find Richard Halliday. But they never allowed that. And it wouldn't have cost them a dime. If all that you're being told is truth and you see factual truth, then sue them. Whoever leaked Richard's files, and we're hoping to do, if you are a Gold Star family, if you are a family that has a missing soldier, service member, please get in touch with us, because we need to do a class action lawsuit. And why do we need to do the class action lawsuit? Because we don't believe that that cover up Veronica is going to answer that letter. Okay, we don't believe she is. She's derelict. She's only she's negligent in her duties, and that is her pattern. And so she's not going to answer that letter with any kind of effort into trying to find Richard. And so the class action lawsuit that we would like to put together is what we can do to get discovery. And discovery would allow us to see the Child Protective Service complaint. The discovery would allow us to see these articles, these records that are being leaked out in full content, not redacted. So this is That is why a class action lawsuit or a lawsuit would be really handy. Whoever is watching this live and knows where or about Richard Halliday, you need to get this family closure and stop the baloney and the games and adult up and tell this family where their son is. Yep. And is 20,000 Hispanic immigrant children missing under her watch from Fort Bliss Emergency Intake Center. The Emergency Intake Center on Fort Bliss. Yeah, she's supposed to be for Hispanic. She's supposed to be for women, and she's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. What worries me is the children being took for sex trafficking. Is that why they are missing? They're unaccounted for, and you're talking about minors, and they could be used in so many different ways. So many different ways. The dangers out there for their age group is enormous. But they have no problem illegally exposing our sons and daughters and Hispanic sons and daughters, migrant sons and daughters to incredible dangers. And they have no problem exposing us to incredible dangers. Look at the danger that we are putting in by being a whistleblower for this, because they made us essentially the investigators for our son's murder case. Yeah, that's all that I can read right now. So thank you so much. And yeah, just get this out. And 22 shares. Wow. Thank you. And I will be back tomorrow. Say some prayers, and at nighttime, and I should really put that on, and I think I showed everything that I wanted to make sure. Yeah, I did. So I will be back tomorrow. Please share this information, and because you're the only way. A massive populist movement to protect our volunteer sons and daughters that are lied to by their recruiters to go into the military. That all needs to change. All needs to change. It needs to be retrenched, and we need to stop this criminal syndicate and stop freeloading public servants that are never held accountable for their crimes, the worst type of crimes. Okay, thank you everyone. Good night, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing.